Welcome to Despite Popular Belief, where we discuss reform, biblical theology, and a culture full of opinions and agendas. I'm Stephen Lauterbach, and today we're talking about wielding the sword. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. There's a lot of really cool stuff on the episode today, so what are you going to get out of today? Well, we have American sniper John Cooper coming on the show today to talk about how can you love your neighbor and shoot him in the face. These are his words, not trying to be clickbaity. He actually has some practical biblical information, wisdom about what it's like to be a soldier for your country and a Christian at the same time. How do those two go together? Loved sitting down with him, and having a veteran on the show made me want to reach out to our former co-host, Erik Marti, who also is a veteran. He was a Marine, and he was free. He was available to come on the show and help me interview John Cooper. And so we get a chance to have our old co-host back, which is so exciting to me. We had a really good time. The episode was so long, I think I'm going to break it up into a two-parter. So I'll do my best to release those as close together as possible, but I will break it up just because it was a long conversation. And while Erik was in the studio, he recorded a bonus episode with me. So people who are part of the base ministry support at Patreon, you guys were going to get some more bonus content. If that's something that the rest of you are interested in, if you'd like to support the ministry and get free bonus content, well, technically it's not free. Okay, I didn't mean it like that. I'm tripping over my words here. We do have a $5 a month base ministry support online. It is at patreon.com/despite popular belief. All right, we got that stuff out of the way. And you might be asking, so this guest, John Cooper, you're not talking about John Cooper from Skillet. No, I'm not. And he gets that all the time. No, this is the best John Cooper I know personally. So really cool guy. He's got his own podcast called Godly Grunts. It's a cool, awesome, biblical show. Check it out. It's on just about every podcasting platform. If you're looking for some new content, if you know any veterans that have been looking for some kind of Bible-based content that's not cringy, it's like, this dude's solid. This guy is super cool. And you'll get a chance to see and hear that. And, of course, if you guys are listening on audio, we do have a video version of the show. You can find that at YouTube. And, so you have the opportunity to do either one. I want to do two quick segments before we get into the interview with John Cooper. And let's just start out with Quick Opinion. Okay, so Quick Opinion. This was a couple episodes ago. I mentioned how strange I thought it was that TobyMac had an album called "I" on it, and then had a song on the album with lyrics that say Illuminati coming through. And it literally is saying Illuminati, not sounding like it is Illuminati coming through. So I said, this is super weird. And I actually just got this from my dad last night. I'm going to cue up this page here for those of you watching on video. I'm pulling up, this is directly from TobyMac's website from his frequently asked questions. And I thought this was, it literally is addressing what we were talking about. So I'm going to try to paraphrase here, but I'm going to read parts of this. TobyMac explains, though the world can twist almost anything for bad, my intentions were pure regarding focused eye in my artwork. I'm an athlete. My dad always told me to keep an eye on it. So that's the context, is focusing on the ball. Your eye is a lamp that provides a light for your body. When your eye is good, your whole body is filled with light. And he quotes Matthew 6, verse 22. Let's see here. And so then they're asking, what is the song "Ill Am I" about? And apparently, it was originally done by an artist called Soul Junk. And he actually talked to the songwriter directly before going into the studio to record this, the songwriter being Glenn Galaxy. He loved the feel and flow of the song. Let's see here. He's saying that the songwriter used the word Illuminati because it explains a deeper enlightenment of a knowledge, a superior knowledge. And so he says, this is defined as persons possessing or claiming to possess superior enlightenment. And he confirmed that the song was really speaking out against Pharisee-type attitude, like holier than thou. So he claims that that is the reason why he used the lyrics. He didn't actually write the lyrics. He was doing a cover. So that kind of explains that. And then he goes on to say that he's aware there's a secret society called the Illuminati, but that he's a follower of Jesus Christ. And his intention of using the word Illuminati was for what we just explained above. So take that with a grain of salt. You can dig into it and read the full explanation here off of his website. And that's just tobymac.com, frequently asked questions. Okay, kind of cool to get some closure on a quick opinion. I still wouldn't use the word Illuminati in any of the stuff I'm making. Even though we know what it means, I just can't disassociate it from the blood-drinking cannibalistic cult. I just can't. Anyways, yeah, to each his own, I guess. Let's jump into church history now. This one I am very excited about. I stumbled across it on Instagram late at night, and I did some more digging into it. Pun intended. This is an underground city. Okay, so let me just pull up some pictures here. Again, people, if you're just listening, you will kind of miss out on some of what we're looking at here. This is the city of Derinkayu in Turkey. And what's so amazing about this is this was a Christian underground city. It was 279 feet deep. It had approximately 5 layers, and each layer could be separated by huge stone doors. They could section it off. You're like, okay, yeah, it's just an underground city. It was so much more. And for those on video, you're seeing I'm scrolling through some of these images. It's absolutely incredible craftsmanship. Look at these tunnels. I mean, it's just amazing. They had some vaulted ceilings, stairways, and it goes beyond that. So it housed about 20,000 people. It had wine presses, olive oil presses, churches, schools. It had complex ventilation shafts. It had running water, and it was at its peak between the years of 780 and 1180 AD. And the Christians used this underground city to hide from Muslims during the Arab-Byzantine Wars. And here's some more pictures here. You could see this carved into the side of this mountain here. It's just incredible stuff. They had livestock down there too. I forgot to mention that, unless I did say that. Then forgive me. Let's see. Am I missing anything else that they had in there? I mean, they even had like catacombs and graves in there, so they would bury their dead in there as well. So this was actually still in use all the way up until 1923 by Christians who used it for safety and for living. And there was what they called the Great Population Exchange, where all of the Christians were exiled to Greece, and that's when they stopped using it. And I believe several decades went by where this city remained, quote unquote, undiscovered. So it was rediscovered, and they started excavating it at that point. And it's just this amazing thing. So if you're not watching on video and you didn't see the pictures, look this up. Derinkayu, it's got a weird spelling. It's Derinkuyu. I will put those resources on the show notes page at manifoldministries.com, so you can look that up in your free time. It's cool. All right, I've said enough. The segments are out of the way. Let's talk to American sniper John Cooper from Godly Grunts. Let's kick this off. All right, we got super cool guest with us today. It is John Cooper. And he's with Godly Grunts. He's got his own show. Very cool stuff. He's a veteran. And also, you see sitting next to me, he's probably going to be in the intro anyways. Yeah. Erik Marti, former co-host. Erik,
What's up,
welcome.
guys? Thank you. Thank you for having me.
But the honored guest, John Coover. John, thank you so much for coming on the show. Welcome to Despite Popular Belief.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So can you give us a brief history of your experience serving as a soldier and how that led to the path of going into full-time ministry, which you're working on right now?
Yeah, so I'm from Niagara Falls, New York. I'll just start from the beginning, the cold and frozen tundra, and I went to the Army at the age of 24 as an infantryman. I went to college. I went to Baptist Bible College. It's in Clarkson, Pennsylvania. Had a stint. I got kicked out for a while for loving the reefer, and but I went back in and finished my degree, and then I felt God calling me to go into the Army, and I kind of don't know another way but to go full bore. Funny quick story. I haven't shared this on any internet, so you guys are the first to hear this story. But I was in ROTC when I first went to college, and then when I got kicked out for doing drugs, then I got kicked out of ROTC. They sent me a letter in my junior year. I had been waiting on them, see what was going to go on. I wanted to go active Army. And I got probably not the last, because I heard that they just did this again, but I got a go to war or go to jail letter. And it was look, you owe us this much money. You have a month to pay it off, or you're going to go to jail.
Yikes.
For tax evasion, which, it wasn't. And then it was or you can go combat arms. And I'm like, oh, okay, looks like I know what I'm doing. So it's what I wanted to do anyway. So it wasn't that big of a push. But I got in. I went to the 25th Infantry Division, which is out in Hawaii. And I did my time there. I was a gunner, 50 cal gunner on trucks. And then I tried out for Recondo, which stands for Reconnaissance Commandos. Went through that tryout and then became part of that unit. We were the brigade's most forward reconnaissance element through the jungles. And then from there, went to the sniper section there, became a sniper, came to 10th Mountain Division, which is up in the frozen tundra of New York, North Country, and was a sniper here. And then was a sniper section leader and did one deployment to Afghanistan with Special Forces Command. So.
Wow, that's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Erik, for anybody that's a new listener, why don't you give a brief history of yourself, because you've served as well.
Yeah, I was, no, I didn't do any combat tours, I'll say that. I was in I was a wireman in the Marine Corps. But in 2011, October 2011 is when I went to Parris Island for boot camp. And then from there, I went to North Carolina at Camp Lejeune for combat training for a month. Then 29 Palms, California for about 5 months for MOS school. And then I came back to Cleveland, and then do our weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the summer. And then became a Cleveland police officer during that time. And then I did one deployment to the Republic of Georgia. So we were just training the Georgian military, and it was awesome. The Georgians love America, so that was really cool. So I had a different path than you. So,
but every job's important. Yeah, that's for sure.
No, I loved it. I was ready to get out just because of what I tell people. I'm not there's reservists that see more combat and stuff than certain active duty people, so it's I'm not knocking the reserves at all, but I just realized that in my opinion, if you're going to do it, if I had to give someone advice, I would suggest going active duty, but that's probably just my personality. Once I get fixed into something, I just want to focus on that. So once I had to deal with that and a career and a family, I just wanted to cut that extra part of my life out. So that's when I decided I wasn't gonna re-enlist. But I'm happy I got to do at least one deployment. I was gonna be disappointed if I didn't go anywhere for anything.
Yeah, and for those listeners who don't know anything about the military, like you don't get to choose if you go. Like,
Right.
your unit gets assigned, at least is the way in active duty. I know some reserve and guard units, it's a little different, but in active duty, I mean, your unit gets called up and that's who goes. Like you don't, when I went to Hawaii, I didn't do any combat deployments my first 3 years. And it wasn't for lack of being good at our jobs. It was just, hey, we need you to stay in the Pacific because we're afraid of North Korea doing this, or the Philippines, what's going on there. So we need you to just train here. And if we need you to rapidly deploy, we'll rapidly deploy you. And
Wow.
so, it's not a lot. There's this, because I had this misconception before I went in. Excuse me. There's a misconception that it's like, hey, only, if you didn't deploy, if you did your 3 years and then deploy, you were a crappy soldier or whatever it is. Because I hear that sometimes. And it's like, no, that guy didn't get a choice. He did what he did what he had to do. He went to all the stupid training events. He did everything that he was told. He was probably better than most of the soldiers who got to deploy. He just, it's just luck of the draw. It's, we know it's God's providence and sovereignty, but, at the end of the day, you don't get to choose anything. So,
Yeah, I never met him. He passed away before I was born, but my grandfather was a drill sergeant. And then my uncle, who I never met, he was killed. He was a captain in the Army and was killed in Vietnam, was killed by a landmine. And yeah, it was crazy. My mom was 5 at the time when he was killed, but I guess he did one tour in Vietnam and came back. And that I don't know what the circumstances were. This is just what I heard, but that for some reason he had a choice. So I don't know what that circumstance was back in the 60s, but apparently he was really upset that he was home and he knew he still had men in Vietnam, and he went back. And was killed there. So. I've got I think every single branch of the military in my family.
Nice.
So I got a lot of family in the military, and like I said, huge respect, especially, those of you guys that end up, going into combat or certain dangerous situations. I mean, I just have a reverence for you guys, so I thank you for that.
Yeah, and in Vietnam, they did individual year deployments. So now what the military tends to do, I think Marine Corps is usually 6 month, Army is 9.
Yeah.
Currently, and they deploy a unit for that amount of time. They stay there, and then they rotate the entire unit back out. So in World War II, it was you go until the job is done, and same in Korea. And then once they got to Vietnam and they realized they were going to be there for a while, because until recently, Vietnam was the longest war we had. They would rotate individuals and the units would stay. Well, they realized that there was no unit cohesion with that.
Right.
And so what they started to do, I don't know exactly when they chose to do this, but they chose to deploy divisions or brigades, groups of soldiers that have trained together for a period of time and then bring that back. That seems to have worked better. There's always the opinion that units should just stay there until the war is done, because that's just kind of the way war has traditionally been fought up until recently. You get to know the local. There's good and bad. I don't want to get into it. That's more of a tactical, strategic conversation. But there's pros and cons to it. But that was a thing in Vietnam. That's why there was so much risk. It was because soldiers didn't train together before deployment. The first time they worked together would be their first patrol with a guy. So, you don't really get the trust or the SOPs built and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to have you come on the show is I wanted to talk about life by the sword. So, obviously, there's going to be Christians that go to war. We're not really going to talk about like pacifism, I don't think, today. We specifically want to cover Christianity, the Bible, and how those can work in a Christian lifestyle. Is that possible? But before we get into that, you have a tag name online. You go by the Deacon of Death. So I've heard this story of how you came up with the name before, but if you could you share with us where you got that tag name from?
Yeah. So I have always enjoyed, being a soldier in that job. It's always been fun for me. And I was a deacon. I was an elder in my church. And so deacon kind of became one of my nicknames. You get all of them. You get father, padre, you get all the nicknames when they find out you're a Christian. But the way I came up with this tag name, Deacon of Death, is in Romans 13. Just turning there. Hear them fresh pages flipping. So in Romans 13 verses 4-5, for it is a minister of God for your good. It's talking about the government. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword in vain, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on those who practice evil. And so minister, deaconos, can also be deacon. And so the government, therefore, is a deacon to put people to death, who are unjust. And so I took that as the deacon of death. Like, that is your ministry to God, is to put people down. And it's not something that's often talked about or recognized in the Christian faith as military service or police service or border patrol, as an actual ministry to God. And so that's why I came up with the nickname Deacon of Death, because it is one of those things. Like, even my pastor up here, he was just kind of like, Deacon of Death, like, that sounds a little non-biblical. And when I sat down and explained it to him, he was like, it makes sense, I just don't really like it. And I'm like, well, you don't have to like it. I don't really care.
I love it.
But so that's where it came from. It's a good conversation opener too. Sure. Like, I don't walk around with a t-shirt that says Deacon of Death or anything, but if someone does ask, like, why are you, well, for instance, I got into it. I don't like social media commenting wars. I actually got my first one in 2 years. It was a post I put on an abortion.
Oh boy.
And how it is murder. And the lady said, she was like, how can you call it killing when your tag name is Deacon of Death?
Touche.
And then it opened up the door for, like, this is why I'm, the name Deacon of Death and all that kind of stuff. So it has opened up for some conversation, but then she just blocked me, which is fine. So
war ended.
Yeah, war ended. No skin off my back.
That was a short deployment.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how can you justify being in the military and having to kill people? How can you be a Christian that kills people? What does the Bible have to say about any of this?
Yeah, so we just looked at Romans 13, 4-5, which is the ministry of the sword. So we are deacons, we are ministers of the sword. We go up after people who are unjust. They are going up against the laws of God. We don't decide who that is. That's under a government, under our leadership. They decide where we go, and we put them to death. Common verses that are thrown out for pacifism. I know we're not really going to get into it, but you have to have a just war theory, meaning the cause is just, to be able to function this way as a Christian. If you're a pacifist, that's how you interpret the scriptures, I guess. Like, this probably isn't the job for you. If it's not on your conscience, if it's on your conscience where you can't kill, this isn't the job for you. God leads different people's consciences in different ways. We know that. And so, but there is a scriptural precedence for people in the military. So we go to the Old Testament, we go to David, the life of David. He's known as what? The man after God's own heart. Mm-hmm. Well, the guy slaughters people all over the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. And so you say, wow, that's the Old Testament. That's the way they did it back then. We're in the New Covenant. Okay. Well, then you go to Matthew 8, verse 10, where he encounters the Roman centurion. And then he says, I have not met a man in Israel with faith like this man. Well, he's a commander of at least, I think it's 50 soldiers. So you're telling this guy had to have proven himself, and in that time he probably proved himself in conquest to be here. Yet he is a man who has faith like no man in Israel. So now we see Jesus doesn't have a problem with it. So that's in the Gospels. We see in the epistles that obviously this is a ministry from God. And then we see in Revelation that Christ comes back in Revelation 19 as a warrior with a sword. King of Kings, Lord of Lords, here to conquer and wage war against the ungodly. So all through Scripture, we see that there's this common theme that it is something that God has ordained to be part of. Now, then you say, well, as a Christian, we're supposed to love others. We're supposed to, turn the other cheek in these things. But sometimes, and I always break it down into two ways when I'm asked this question, is you can love someone and shoot them in the face.
Yeah.
Like that. And it's something that's hard to reconcile sometimes. But you can love someone and shoot them in the face. And the first reason is that you love the innocent people that are around them. So I can't just love you.
Yeah.
And we saw this in Wisconsin, where that guy, he was charged with trying to hit like his ex with his car. They brought him to court. They just released him because that's the loving thing to do, right? Well, then he gets in an SUV and kills a bunch of people, including children, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So what's really the loving thing to do? Is the loving thing to do to let him go and hurt others? Because that's not very loving to the society around you. And so letting the Taliban roam around free to go torture Christians and others is not very loving, right? Like, is it more loving to kill those people and everyone else is safe? Or is it more loving to just let them go and kill innocent people around them? Because they don't discriminate who's evil and who's bad.
That's a great point.
So, like, what is loving? Because you can't just love. You can't say, well, you have to love the evil person, but not everyone else around them. You have to love everyone. And so, what is the most loving thing to do for the people of wherever you're deployed to? And the second point is that the more evil people do, the more judgment they incur on themselves. So we will all be judged, right? Every man is appointed time for him to die and then face the judgment.
Right.
So we will all be judged for our deeds, every single person before Christ. Well, the more wicked you do, or the more wicked things you do, the more things you will be judged for. So actually, me killing you before you can go murder somebody else is the most loving thing I can do for you, because you're not incurring more judgment on yourself.
Interesting.
And so
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Me neither.
Yeah, so really, if we are thinking theologically down the line, it's like, okay, well, if I let this guy live and then he goes and murders more people, well, then he's incurring more judgment on himself in hell. So punishing the wicked is something that we shouldn't take upon ourselves. There's a ministry, like we talked about, that God has for this. There are ways to do this, but it is a loving thing to do. Would I rather witness to somebody in the Taliban than shoot them? Yes. Does that opportunity come by every day? No. Right. So if I'm given the choice, I will witness to them. But when they do something that takes away that choice, there's nothing. I didn't put them in that situation. I'm not making them do that. Right. I'm here to protect the people that are around them.
Yeah, I've always thought it was bizarre where people can't make a distinction between self-defense or a nation at war. I understand the arguments for, there's people who think we should have never gone to Vietnam. We should have never gone to Iraq. Like you said, that's sort of a different conversation. But I've spoken with people who are incapable of making that distinction. It's, you killed somebody, that's it. That's the end. You killed a person. And really the reason I think it's bizarre is, like, I always just bring it, to a personal level. Like, what if somebody's kicking your door down? And I've literally had this conversation with a person who I haven't talked to in a long time. But it was a woman, and I can't remember what the started it, but she's totally anti-gun. Guns are evil. There's no reason to have a gun. And I was like, well, my wife, I can't be home all the time, and my wife owns guns. I own guns, and if someone's breaking into the house while I'm not home, I want my wife to shoot them. And I said, "What would you do?" And she literally said, "Run, hide, scream, fight." And then it's like
naive.
I just cannot wrap my head around that. And I was like, I think the biggest argument for the Second Amendment is the fact that, like, just look at UFC fighters. Like, look at the men in this world that you're just like, what was God thinking when he made this man? I was like, if Stipe Miocic, heavyweight champion, kicked in my door, there's nothing I can do other than shoot him. I mean, that's literally my only option. So, I find it very bizarre that like you said, I've always thought that myself. I mean, you described it and articulated it, better than I feel like I ever have. But I always knew it was possible I could be deployed to a combat zone, and likely the Middle East, obviously, because of the current wars we're in. Yeah. And I've never thought to myself, like, oh, I'm just going to harbor this hate and, like, go there and try to kill as much as I can. It's just, I'm going to be ready. I hope I'm ready, and I want to be brave, and do what's right if that ever happens. But yeah, I don't sit here and, like, think about how much I hate them. I agree. I think you can love people and have sympathy, or like, man, I wish I did not have to do this. But it's an unfortunate reality. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the world we live in. Yeah. And so and God knows that. I mean, God knows everything. And so that's why God's established these things. I mean, you see terrible things that you wish you didn't have to see, but you also bear it so other people don't have to see it, right? And so one thing that I have realized in my service, especially after my deployment, was they don't know what evil people are.
Yeah.
And they live in this bubble. And I'm sure are you still a police officer?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure you see this as a police officer. There are evil people out there.
Yes.
And you sit back as, like, even if you're not a Christian, you just sit back as a normal human being, and you're like, how is someone capable of such, like, wretchedness? We know why, right? As Christians, we know why. But we look at that, and, like, most people don't have any exposure to how evil people really are.
Yeah.
They may look at it on the news and think, oh, that's horrible. They may watch a special on television about a mass murder, right? But that's in some far other town where it's never going to happen in Wheatfield, New York, right? That's never going to happen there until it does, and people are exposed to extreme evil. Well, in all these other countries, and especially when a war is going on, you're exposed to the evil that people are capable of. And I mean, just going and shooting people at random, or blowing people up for Allah or whatever they believe in, or sport. Some of them are insane, and they just strap a bomb onto these insane dudes and send them out there. And so people don't realize how evil people can get. And those of us who have unfortunately seen it, when someone says to us, like you said, we're like, I'm just going to scream. And you're like, you're just going to enrage their bloodlust. And they're going to go after you harder because they're enjoying it, because they're mentally, not only mentally, unable to figure things out, but they're also probably, like, demon influenced or possessed to do these evil things. And so, it's naive to hold those positions, in my opinion. And it's not scriptural. I mean, Exodus 22 clearly says that we can defend ourselves.
Right.
So, and if you want to look in the New Testament, it's in Luke, where Jesus tells his disciples to go get swords because he's not going to be there to defend them anymore. So, I mean, this is something that's in Scripture. So you have to reconcile. If Christ is going to allow me to kill someone, how can it be loving? And you just look to his example, and that's how you figure it out.
And another, like you said, not everyone's a Christian. Not everyone holds this worldview. But as a Christian, if men are called to be protectors, what are we protecting anyone from? So if being a Christian is never causing physical harm in any capacity, no matter the circumstance, what am I supposed to protect my wife from? Obviously there's spiritual, mental things that I guess you could argue you have to be protected from, but when we're supposed to provide, protect, take care of, there's evil in the world, and like you said, certain people are in unique positions to see the most evil humanity has to offer. So maybe that's one of the biggest reasons. It's just, but you wonder how it's possible, because like Steve, you haven't been in the military or a cop,
right?
But you understand there's people who murder, rape, steal, commit genocide. So it's one of those things that's just kind of a bizarre. You almost wonder why everyone doesn't agree on it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And when I was back in the metal band, one of our sponsors, well, it wasn't a sponsor, we would raise money for a nonprofit. I don't think they're around anymore. I think they were called Red Thread, and then they turned into Eternal Threads. Anyways, we raised money for them to fund patrol that could go into Nepal and rescue kids out of sex slavery. And so I did that for years with the metal band, and the stories that we heard from the nonprofit, it's shocking. It will leave you speechless. Like, how could a person do such a thing? I didn't have kids at the time. I have kids now, and to think about that stuff. Or I saw stuff in Romania when I was doing missionary work out there. I saw stuff on kids. I know what that is. I know what happened. And sex crime in itself is just like absolutely. It's jarring. It almost doesn't make sense in your head, because obviously the design was not for that to be normal, and it's not good. It's not good. That's why it defiles us when we see that. The same thing with like having to take a life. It was never meant to be like that. We weren't meant to see that. We weren't meant to go through that action. But there are situations where we have to, and that's why it feels defiling. It is unnatural, well, to the original design, but now we live in a fallen world. So that is our reality now. It's different now. We're stuck in it, and until we have our Savior come and get us. It's the older you get, the more you just embrace that. Man, that the Savior's he's coming for us, and it's a relief. And to be plucked out of this world that's so evil.
Yeah, well,
and I think
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think too, people don't realize how beautiful God's wrath and judgment can be. And we look at that. So, for instance, this Sunday message I was listening to, and it was talking about how beautiful are the feet of those who spread the good news, right? In Romans. And where that's coming from is it comes from Isaiah, where it's talking about the Messiah, but also comes from Nahum, where he is saying like, hey, the Assyrians are about to be demolished and wiped off the face of the earth. And the question posed was like, would we feel like that's good news? And in my opinion, I'm like, yes. That means that the people under the boot of the Assyrian Empire are about to be liberated. If someone came to me and said, God is going to consume the Taliban, I would be in tears praising him, because I know the evil, I've seen the evil they're capable of. And so when we think like, man, God's judgment is it's one of those things that God has to do, right? It was like, no, that is a loving thing that he is doing, because he doesn't, we all want to say like, where's the justice these days? But when we see actual justice being played out, when we see evil people getting killed, they're like, well, no, that's not justice, because it's not loving. And it's like, well, what it is loving because it's justice, and God is both. And so,
Right.
again, am I advocating that Christians should just go and buy machine guns and start being like, you're evil, so I'm just going to kill you? Like, that's not what we're advocating here. But at the same time, that justice is beautiful. And like you said, like you see this, you hear these stories of this evil stuff, and you're like, why is this allowed to happen? Jesus, come back. And when he comes back and he takes us up, like, he is going to consume this earth with fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it says in the Bible. That's what we believe. But that's not because he, quote, has to. Like, that's because this is him. This is who he is. He's both loving, and he's in 2 Peter 3, it's saying that he's patient with us. Like, he's staying his wrath and giving us time to repent. But there will come a time, like in the days of Noah, where that door is shut. And then it's, it is sad. It's not that we praise that people are going to go to hell. It's sad that that's a reality, but it's part of love, is that justice and evil has to be paid for. That's love. Is that evil has to be punished.
It's great to have Erik Marti back on the show. It felt so natural having him sit next to me. A lot of fun. And John Cooper, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to us. We also recorded a show with John on his podcast, so be looking for that. I will link that stuff on social media once that episode we did with him comes out. So we just ended up doing lots of content together that night. I think we spent like 3.5 hours in the studio just talking all night long. Lots of fun. Guys, all the material that we talked about today can be found at manifoldministries.com, and you just scroll down to Despite Popular Belief, click on this episode, you'll get all that good stuff. And there's other content creators on that website that are part of our network, and it's all Bible-based, just God-honoring content. So check some of those other creators out. And I got nothing else for you. Part 2 will be coming soon. And you know what I always say, stand before kings.
Stand before kings!
This has been a Manifold Ministries podcast. For more content, visit us at manifoldministries.com.